So here's what's up. Earlier this year, I did a video on the big guns of horror, which prompted a lot of discussion. And what I realized is that when it comes to the horror genre, there's a big three: Friday the 13th, Halloween, and A Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, no one is saying that these are the three best franchises in horror, but they're definitely the most recognized and known. They're the equivalent of like saying to someone, name three fast food restaurants, and you're probably going to hear McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's like the most amount of times. If you go out onto the street and ask someone to name off like some horror franchises, you're going to hear those three a whole lot. But then, of course, what about beyond that? What are the biggest and most loved franchises after those? Well, I asked you guys to send me in your lists, and oh boy, did you. These 151 people answered the call and sent me their favorite 10 franchises that aren't the big three. But then I asked you to score them by giving your favorites of your favorite a full 10 points, your second favorite 9 points, and so on down the list until you got to your least fave of your faves and you gave that one 1 point. Then I added all that up, and right now we're going to go through the top 20 point getters, the biggest and best of the horror franchises. It's showtime. Okay, coming in at number 20, this one did pretty well with 109 points. Total, it's the Puppet Masters series. This one landed on 25 lists and had an average ranking of 4.36, so people generally had it around the middle or a bit lower. And if you can believe it, there are 15 entries to this series, one of the longer running ones on here. And it didn't end up on my personal list, but I like these movies. But if I'm giving it my own personal viewing, I would say that I genuinely appreciate, like, I don't know, about 8 out of the 15. And one thing I'm going to go through is whether or not I'm looking forward to more installments of this franchise. And I have to say, based on the last couple of entries here, this isn't one that I get very excited about anymore, which is why I likely left it off my list. At number 19, we've got one that's having a nice little resurgence right now. And with 110 points, it's the Big G himself, Godzilla. This made it only on 17 lists, 8 less than Puppet Master, but its average was a 6.47, so people generally gave it more points, which gave it the edge to beat the Puppets by 1 point. And yeah, there's something to be said about the number 20 being held by things that are significantly smaller than humans, and 19 by things that are way, way larger. And this one did make it onto my list, and I gave it 4 points. And yes, I love Godzilla. I've been a fan for ages, and out of a whopping 38 films, I think there's only about 7 or 8 that I just do not want to rewatch. And based on how well that -1 has been received, I'm pretty sure that we can look forward to more coming up. And of course, yes, I'm looking forward to more Godzilla. I am always looking forward to more. I love how they're handling these in the native Japan, between how great Shin Godzilla and -1 were, and I even enjoy the MonsterVerse versions, even though they're more in line with the silly Showa era films than anything else. Moving up to number 18, and here's a contrast to the previous two, and with 117 points, it's The Reanimator. Like the Puppet Master movies, this one also made it onto 25 lists, but this got a higher scores and had an average of 4.68. And this was another one that I didn't have on my own list, but it's still an awesome series. And it's only 3 movies. But I suppose since there's only 3 of them, and I only really love one of them, I can't say it's one of my faves. Like, the first film is an all-time classic, and I think that the second one is a lot of fun, but it is a step down. And the third one is alright, but not one I revisit that often. And in terms of being interested in future entries, I have to say that I'm not. I don't think I am. Without Gordon or Yesna's involvement, and knowing that any new entries would be a remake or a reboot, it's just not something I can get worked up about more. Going to our number 17 franchise, and it's one that I didn't think would make it on here. And with 123 points, it's Predator. This one was only on 22 lists, but the average was a 5.59, so it's a little more well regarded. And yeah, I didn't have this on my list, and the reason I didn't think it'd be here is because I myself don't really put this into the horror category. I guess there's elements, and honestly, you could probably make the same argument about Godzilla, and apparently a lot more of you guys out there say this is horror enough, so here it is. And yeah, even if I had thought of this as horror myself, I'm not sure I would have it on my personal list. If you're including the AVP movies, then this franchise is 7 movies, and I really only dig 3 of them, so it's not one that I would just be super happy to marathon. However, based on how Prey was, which I enjoyed, just maybe not as much as other people, but based on that, I am looking forward to future entries. Let's go on now to number 16, and this one earned 136 points, and I'm kind of surprised that this was as high as it was, and it's Hatchet. This was on 26 lists, the most so far, and it had an average of 5.23, so it was ranked in the middle and a little higher for most, so a pretty nice performance. And again, not on my list, but I have to say I do like the Hatchet movies a bunch. They're just silly fun to watch, and I like the practical effects, but they're just not ones that I get excited to rewatch. Although when I do, I have fun, so it's a good thing all around. But there's only 4 of them, and there's none of them that I outright dislike. But again, none that I overwhelmingly love either. But they're fun enough that if they put out a part 5, I'd be down for it. Coming in at number 15, and we finally have one of the more old school franchises with 137 points, 1 point more than Hatchet, and it's the Hammer Dracula series. So this was on 23 lists, 3 less than Hatchet, but a higher average of 5.95, which is how it snuck past it. And I don't have this on my list, but it probably could have been because I do love them. There's 9 of them, but maybe because they're just not very tightly linked and are a bit uneven, I don't usually think of them as a franchise per se, I guess. It's pretty nice to see some more love for an older series on here, though, although I guess, technically Godzilla is older, but since that's still ongoing, and this ended 50 freaking years ago now, it's easier to see as a classic. And yeah, I would not be excited about a new entry here, since Hammer Studios now just don't do what they used to, and we're not getting a Christopher Lee Drac. So what's the point? Okay, number 14 here, and it's one that I was pretty curious to see how it fared, and with 153 points, we have the Return of the Living Dead films. This made it onto 30 lists, now the highest number on here, and earned an average of a 5.1. And yeah, this wasn't on my list at all. I think the first one is one of the coolest horror films of all time, but the entire rest of the series just does not live up to it. Like, sure, I think the second one is fun, and I do really like the third, but it's nowhere near as cool. And the last 2 are just atrocious, so I couldn't put it on my list in good conscience. And there looks like that there is another entry that's upcoming, and I'm not really looking forward to it. So I guess that's an indication of how I view this one as a franchise as opposed to one movie that I adore. Number 13 now, and this one I was bummed wasn't higher, and it beat Return of the Living Dead by 1 point. And with 154 points, it's Jaws. It made it onto 29 lists, 1 less than Return, but had an average of 5.31, slightly higher. And yeah, of course I had this on my list, and it was my 10-pointer. I love all the Jaws movies. Sure, the first is the best by around a million miles, but if you told me that I had to sit and watch all 4 back to back tomorrow, I'm doing it. And I'm doing it with a smile. Like, go ahead and call Jaws the Revenge one of the worst movies ever made. I don't care. That movie's hilarious and so much fun to watch. And as for being excited about a new entry, I feel pretty confident that's not going to happen. There's just so many other shark movies out there now that remaking or doing a new Jaws just doesn't have any point. Our number 12 is another one that I'm excited did well, and with 163 points, it's Tremors. This one was also on 30 lists and had an average of 5.43, so it was fairly similar to Jaws, but made it onto one more list and had a little higher average rating. And I had this one on my list as well, but with 6 points. And I'm not sure that how much I love the first Tremors has come across in the video, since it's not one that I talk about as much. But I freaking love Tremors so much. And there hasn't been any of the sequels that I've outright not liked. Sure, none of them are as great as the original, and they're just sort of enjoyable, but I do have a good time with all of them. And in terms of being excited about more, the answer is yes. Bring me a new entry with Bert, who we all know isn't dead, or give me that reboot thing that Kevin Bacon did. I don't care. Just give me more. Let's go now to number 11, and this one is pretty cool. It has 186 points, and it's Psycho. This was on 34 lists and had an average of 5.47, so a similar average to Tremors, but it just made it onto more lists. And it's strange to think of Psycho as a franchise, but yeah, it is. And I had it on my list as well, although I only had it at 2 points. But come on, the original Psycho is one of the best films ever made. Not just horror, best films. It's so good and changed up the genre dramatically. Plus, when they decided to make a sequel, everyone scoffed, but that thing is damn good. And even though Part 3 trades in that class for trash, it's still pretty damn watchable. And I think that Part 4 is underrated. It's a nice little coda to the whole thing and gets overlooked quite a bit. And in terms of doing something new, I think the TV show Bates Motel kind of did everything that they would want to do with a reboot of sorts, so I don't really see them going back to the well. But if they did, I can't say that I'd be too thrilled to see it, unless it was a shot-for-shot remake of Gus Van Sant's version. So now we enter our top 10 territory, and let's check out our number 10, and it jumped big up to 255 points, and it's Hellraiser, which I have to admit I am surprised was not in the top 5. It made it onto a full 57 lists, 23 more than Psycho did, which is a huge increase. So clearly, there's some love here, but its average was lower to 4.47. And the only film on this list so far with a lower average has been Puppet Master. And I didn't have it on my roster because as a franchise, yeah, I'm not interested. Like first 2 movies, sure, I'm down. Literally everything after that, I'll pass. I mean, there's some entries that I think are watchable and I don't outright hate, but for the most part, I would rather just skip them. And when it comes to being excited about more, I have to say it would have to be under the control of someone that really wanted to bring it back to its roots, because I'll also admit that I was far less impressed by that reboot or requel or whatever it was than some other people. At number 9, it's one that I feel like people are pretty split on, and with 277 points, it's Saw. It made it onto 49 lists, 8 less than Hellraiser, but had an average of 5.65, so that propelled it ahead. And it's weird because I feel like you get the whole range of views on this series, and a number of fans that I know just are not that into it. And when you say that there's a new Saw movie, you're met with rolled eyes. But they make a ton of money, so clearly they have fans. And based on this list, there's plenty of them. And look, I don't have this on my list, but I can't say that I don't get a kick out of these. I've said it before, but I don't think that I really like the Saw movies, but I am kind of fascinated by them. I like what they're doing with the whole timeline aspect of it, and for a while there, they were nailing it. And in terms of being interested in more, sure, I guess. I'm not like excited about them, but I'll certainly watch them. Our number 8 franchise is another one that I thought for sure would be top 3, but nope. Since it's number 8 with 286 points, it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This one was on 58 lists, one more than Hellraiser, but had a better average of 4.93, and that's still under a 5 overall. And I did not have this on my list, and for very good reason. There are now 9 films in this franchise, and I only really like 2 of them. And one more that I think is fun to watch, but isn't all that good. Outside of that, I actively dislike the others, and I would rather not watch them. Like, I know that the remake has a lot of love, but boy, oh boy, do I not enjoy it. But I do love the first one. I think it's one of the most well-made horror flicks out there. But I also think that most of the others actively miss the point of it. So, no, I'm not really all that thrilled to see more, even though there's said to be yet another on the way. Here we go with our number 7 franchise, and this one got 306 points, and it's the Final Destination series. This made it onto 55 lists, 3 less than TCM, but its average was a nice 5.56, which is how it jumped ahead. And again, I didn't have this one on my list. And I think that I feel the same way about these as I do the Hatchet movies. I do enjoy watching them. And if you asked me to go through all of them again tomorrow, like, I wouldn't be mad about it. But I also wouldn't be all that excited. Like, there's 5 of these, and honestly, they're all basically the same movie, which is probably one of the reasons why I don't get all that pumped up about them, since you get to like part 4 in a marathon and you're like, didn't I just see this 3 times already? But again, none of them are hard to watch, and they're a good time. So when you tell me that there's a part 6 coming in the near future, I'm good with it. I'll go see it, but I can't say that I'm excited. Coming in at number 6, we have one that I was really pulling for, and with 344 points, it's Phantasm. This was on 58 lists, tying with TCM, but had a much better average of 5.93, which is pretty good. And look, to me, this is the unsung hero of horror franchises. I had it on my list, and I gave it 9 points, and I just love these. Like, sure, it's uneven, and some entries are better than others, and nothing ever matches the first film, but I'm just really into the mystery that this series is laying down, and I love every minute of it. There's 5 movies, and I'd watch any of them anytime you want me to, and enjoy each and every one of them. I love these so much that I went to go see the restored 4K original film double feature with the premiere of Ravager with the cast and crew, and even though that film is clearly the weak link of the franchise, watching with a crowd was a lot of fun. In terms of being excited about more, I have to say no, though, since it would be Angus Scrim free, and that kind of loses all the appeal for me. Our number 5 spot is another one that kind of straddles the horror world, and with 412 points, almost 70 more than Phantasm, we have the Alien franchise. This was on 63 different lists, and I wonder if it would have been on more if people had held back from it saying it wasn't horror. And it had a 6.53 average, which is the highest average on this roster so far. So people think pretty highly of it. And I didn't have it on my list, but I'll admit it was close. But honestly, it's just all about those first 2 movies. I love those, and I'm all right with 3 and 4, but I'm not that into them. And Prometheus and Covenant, which I was so unimpressed with that I couldn't remember the subtitle of Covenant and had to look it up to write this. And in terms of being excited, I am kind of interested to see what they're going to do with that TV series. But I have to admit, I'm still a bit cautious in my optimism. There was now a huge jump as we go to our number 4 entry. Just huge, because it increased 115 points to 527 with the Romero Dead series. This was on 78 lists with a strong average of 6.75, beating Alien. And of course I had this on my roster, and I gave it 8 points. I just feel like it would be blasphemy if I did not, being from Pittsburgh, and the fact that I used to work in the Dawn of the Dead Mall. Plus, I just love these films. The first 3 are straight up gold, and all of them are masterpieces of zombie cinema. And Land is still fun, and I enjoy it, just not on the same level. And I'll admit that I'm not that crazy about Diary and Survival, but they're both fine, and they don't bring this series down for me at all. And yeah, I don't think we have to worry about having more entries here, unless you're counting those like in name only versions, but I don't really count those, and I'm never really looking forward to them. Top 3 times the big guns of horror outside of Freddy, Jason, and Michael. And sure enough, all 3 of these feature an identifiable icon at the forefront. And our number 3 movie with 581 points is Scream. This one was on 80s people's lists and had an average score of 7.26, the only series to average over a 7 so far. And I don't have it on my list, but I sure as hell get it. I get why people do. Like, for me, it's never really recaptured the magic of the first movie, and although I enjoy the other entries, they're just not ones that I rewatch. But his reputation is strong, and I think it definitely deserves to be up here. And it's funny to think about Ghostface as a horror icon up there with those other guys, since it's more of a costume than it is a character. But he's more or less taken on an identity of his own. And yeah, I look forward to what they're going to do with this. I thought 5 and 6 were decent, and I like the different direction, although I have to admit, the next one is looking a bit iffy with all the personnel changes. Our number 2 franchise is one that I was pretty sure would be up here, and deservedly so. And with 603 points, we have the Chuck Man himself with the Child's Play or Chucky series. This made it onto 96 lists, almost 2/3 of them, and had a strong average of 6.28. I had this on my list as well, although I only gave it 3 points, but I do really enjoy the Chucky movies. There's none of them that I really think are straight up art pieces and like finest film of horror like I do Phantasm and Jaws and such, but I have a good time with every single one of them. There's not one Chucky movie that I don't enjoy watching, and that's saying something. Sure, none of them really leave me contemplating them or picking them apart, but they just guarantee a good time. And I featured Child's Play in that Heavy Hitters of Horror video since I figured Chucky was one of the big name icons. And that appears to be well earned since he placed so high here. And in terms of new stuff, I am anxiously awaiting it. The Chucky show has been a blast so far, so bring it on. And now our number 1 franchise. And wow, I knew this would do well, but maybe not this well, since with 890 points, 287 more than the number 2 entry, 287 more, and it's The Evil Dead. It was on 115 lists. 76% of the lists had this one on there, and its average score was a 7.74, the highest average here by far. So people not only had it on their lists, but they had it high. And I had this one on mine as well, and I had it at a 7. And I think everyone knows that I love these flicks. But I couldn't put it higher because it's 5 films, and it's 3 that I straight up adore, and then 1 that I don't like that much, and then 1 more that I think is alright. But if I'm considering TV offshoots, then Ash vs. Evil Dead just boosts this overall franchise and makes it all the better for me. And these are generally ones that I can put on at any time. I've seen them all in the theater, several with Bruce himself in attendance, and I'm ready for whatever they want to do with the franchise in the future, as long as they remember that its claim to fame was over-the-top style and general insanity and gory Three Stooges flavor. So there you have it, the top 20 horror franchises as decided by you guys. But wait, there's more. I myself had 2 films on my list that didn't make the final 20, although I guess I can see why. I had Leprechaun on my roster for 1 point, and it just barely missed this list. It was 22nd in the overall placement and was only about 10 points away from landing on here. I also gave 5 points to the Amityville franchise because, duh, of course I did. There's no other series out there that I love and hate so much. And how can I not include a franchise that I'm technically a part of? But you guys had lots and lots and lots of other options on your list. So now let's take a look at the complete roster with everyone's entries, and you can see where all of your picks ended up. Okay, so if you enjoyed that, please let me know. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the little bell so you get notified when new videos come out. And of course, go to my Patreon page at patreon.com/movie timelines where you can help support this channel. And you can vote on dead lasts every single month. That's right. Every single month we have a different roster of movies that you are entitled the option of ranking and rating, just like we do on every dead last. So go ahead and do that. These guys do. They're awesome. Thank you guys for contributing to this video. I appreciate that. If you sent in your rankings, thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. Let me know what other franchises are out there. We'll do this again. Maybe we'll revise this in the future once more entries of different things have come out. I don't know. We'll see. Well, thanks for watching. We'll see you again very shortly for another great video. Thanks, guys, and bye-bye.